All right, we're live on the video. Hello to all of our YouTube fans out there. We're going to be going live here any second. I don't know why but it's saying that there's no audio detected. That's weird. There should be.
I certainly hope it's working.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, you ready to go live?
Let's rock.
Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Welcome to Off the Ropes Live with your host, Sports Radio Detroit's Dan Bartley and D&D Sports Chat's Derek Parton. This show is intended to bring you up to date with all things WWE. And now, Off the Ropes Live. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of Off the Ropes Live. As we mentioned before, I am your host, Derek, alongside my co-host, Mr. Dan Bartley. How are we doing tonight, Danny?
Doing well, doing well.
I know that in our previous 2 episodes, we've always had some sort of a funny story. I think we kind of flip-flopped. The first week was the possum. Second week was me bashing my head open at work. And now week 3, oddly enough, we have another unfortunate event that happened to you today in a certain parking lot. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going back and forth. And today it was myself, and I fell at the Schoolcraft College parking lot. Walking up, it was snowing. I know it's not too bad out right now. They got the roads a little bit better. Salt on the ground. But yeah, I took a fall. I took a dive.
Oh, dear. Took a little bit of a spill there.
So I had to sit in class for 2 hours with a wet butt and back.
Wet behind and back. But you did say that no more than about 15 minutes after you posted that on Facebook, the wonderful people at Schoolcraft did manage to get that shoveled and salted, huh?
That's about time.
Oh, goodness gracious.
They've seen my post.
Yep, I'm sure it's happened to many other people. I'm sure you're not the only one, but it is unfortunate that happens when you get a pretty slushy snow and early in the morning. You sometimes just can't get it right in the nick of time when everybody starts showing up there. So kudos to Schoolcraft for getting that all cleaned up and shoveled.
Good for them. If I would have fallen again, they would have known about it.
Oh, no, lawsuits.
I want my tuition back.
Oh, my God. All right, so the real reason that we're here tonight, obviously to talk wrestling, as we do every week. A lot different show this week as far as just a very emotional, I guess, real emotional roller coaster from this past Monday night's Raw. The retirement ceremony of Daniel Bryan. Kind of a shocking announcement. Daniel Bryan announced on Twitter just hours before Monday night's Raw that he will have to retire due to medical reasons, mainly due to, I guess, brain trauma that he's suffered over the years, concussions that have been well documented over the past few years. Kind of a shocking thing as far as thinking that he would be returning to the ring. I know that there's been a lot of talk lately about getting cleared by several doctors outside of WWE, and it was kind of things that we hadn't heard about that he touched on later on in his retirement speech and also on SportsCenter last night with Jonathan Coachman about how he's just been having a lot of seizures, just contusions in his brain and just having a lot of ill effects to all these concussions that they've documented that he's had 3 over the last, I think, 3 years, but there's also been a lot of undocumented ones. Just really a sad story what this guy has contributed, and just it's really, really makes you appreciate a guy more. I know I've touched on before that I'm not really a huge Daniel Bryan fan, but I think it's really when you see these kind of situations, it really kind of gets you right here in the feels.
Yeah, for me, like I'm a Daniel Bryan guy. I took to the Yes movement very well. He's the underdog. He's the guy that WWE didn't want to be there. He wasn't shoved down your throat like certain other people that are top stars now that we all don't like. Yep. And it's unfortunate that his career had to be cut short because of concussions and his just body just deteriorating over many, many years of wrestling, and because of his style. because of Daniel Bryan's style.
Yeah.
He's
Very aggressive.
Every single night he gives you 110%, no matter if it's a Raw, SmackDown, or a house show, he brings it. And he's been bringing it for so many years, and some of his best work actually is not with WWE.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've seen him in ROH. I believe it was at Skateland many, many years ago when we were young toddlers.
Yeah.
And his best stuff, unfortunately, a lot of people haven't seen. And a lot of people I think for you, for example, for your perspective is a little bit different than mine.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of Daniel Bryan. You're kind of on the ends about him. I know you respect him for what he did and you like his ring prowess and how good he was, but you weren't the biggest Daniel Bryan guy, were you?
I wasn't a big Daniel Bryan guy. Obviously, when he was coming up in the ranks of Japan and Ring of Honor back in the mid-2000s, I have watched a lot of his earlier work via YouTube, which is great. And he had some really classic matches back then. I mean, we're talking about with guys like Christopher Daniels, Homicide. He had a match with, I think, Austin Aries that lasted almost 90 minutes back in the day. He is kind of widely considered as the founding father of Ring of Honor. That was one of his monikers back in the early 2000s. As far as WWE goes, I guess it just I always was kind of like in one of those argument sakes of was Daniel Bryan over or was it more or less the chance, the yes chance? A lot of it. I mean, a lot of people say that's one of the biggest arguments is like, you were going to ask earlier in the show if Daniel Bryan deserves to headline the Hall of Fame. Not this year, in my opinion, but next year, if somebody like The Undertaker doesn't call it quits at the end of this year, I can see Undertaker headlining next year's Hall of Fame, which we've heard rumors and announced that Undertaker could go another couple of years. Daniel Bryan, I mean, I think he belongs there for wrestling's sake. But I couldn't really call him a WWE legend. I mean, in 5 years, let's not kid ourselves though. He accomplished probably more in a short 5 years than many guys have in a decade of being here. But I don't know, the character, I'm all about underdogs, but I guess he wasn't really what I thought as a WWE superstar. And I wasn't a big fan of the character. The guy is great, kind of like similar to John Cena. It was a mixture of John Cena, Daniel Bryan. If that meshed together to make a really awesome superstar, maybe I would be more into it. But I don't know. I never really liked his music, never really liked his gimmick. But the guy, you can't take away from him what he performed in the ring. High flyer, almost like a lucha style in the way that he did his moves. I mean, and unfortunately, when you perform like that for years at a time, which 16 years, he went out there and he performed in front of everybody and just gave his life in the ring. Mm-hmm. That's going to take time. That's going to take years off of your career, and we've seen it with many guys. And unfortunately, that's what happened in his case. And he just could never get away from that concussion bug. The concussions in the shoulder and the elbows, injuries that he suffered over the past 3 years or so. He's only wrestled, I want to say, like 5 matches in the last 2 years. So you knew that his time was definitely, he was on borrowed time.
He really was. And it's such shame that careers, and there's so many injuries right now in WWE that,
especially recently,
and you worry, you're like, okay, what are these guys sitting at home saying, okay, one more bad injury and I'm done,
Yep.
Insert Seth Rollins, Cesaro, John Cena. You may or may not like Cena, but you got to respect what he's done for WWE. Daniel Bryan is that guy that was the face of the company for a little while, and I don't know if WWE really realized that. Daniel Bryan was selling merchandise, selling out arenas. Want to know why? Because he's the guy that you can get behind. He's your guy that you meet on the street, you're walking around Kmart, and that's Daniel Bryan. He's just your average guy. He's an average build, average height.
5'9", 190 pounds.
He looks like someone from Duck Dynasty. He's nothing to look at, but when he gets in that ring, he's an entertainer. He's a great wrestler. And he said himself countless times, he's a wrestler. He's not an entertainer. And Daniel Bryan was phenomenal at what he went out there to achieve every night.
Yep.
And that's why I respect Daniel Bryan, and that's why I like him. And I started to like Daniel Bryan back when he came in with The Miz. Back when The Miz brought him in.
NXT.
And NXT's first kind of starting up.
When they first started, when it was kind of like its own segment on Raw. It hadn't been its own brand yet until Triple H took it over, a couple years ago. But back when, the Nexus was around, he was one of the original Nexus members. And he actually, I think that's where he really started kind of catching fire because he was temporarily fired from WWE in May of 2010 when he tried strangling Justin Roberts at ringside with his own tie. And I guess back at that time when WWE was hardcore PG, they've let loose of the reins a little bit nowadays, but back in them days they had a lot of sponsors that they had to deal with. And a lot of
Linda was running.
Yeah, they had a lot of. It was real cautious. It was touchy feely back then, and so that didn't fly. He was released. They put his release into a storyline where, of course, the rest of the NXT rookies, they kicked him out of the group, for showing remorse of his actions, thinking that he would never return to WWE. He actually went to the independent circuit. I think he was even contacted by TNA at one point.
I'm sure he was.
Never went. But he had another stint in WWE. He returned at SummerSlam, where he was, I believe, he was a seventh member of Team WWE. I think that was when it was Bret Hart, John Cena. They were going against the Nexus in that event, and so that was when he got really pushed as a crowd favorite. Mm-hmm. But going back to what he was, the organic that's what I appreciate more now. That 5 years doesn't seem like a long time ago, but I also had a lot different outlook on wrestling, different aspect of wrestling back then, and that was when it's like when people die too. You kind of take people for granted until you lose them. Mm-hmm. Same thing goes for Daniel Bryan. When people in highly contact violent sports such as wrestling have to call it a career at such a young age, you kind of think, oh, I took them for granted when they were actually on TV wrestling, when they were active. And that's kind of like how I thought about Daniel Bryan when I watched his retirement speech the other night. Is the guy. He's really just an amazing talent. And yeah, I got emotional, especially when he was talking about his dad and stuff like that, because, when you see people cry, you kind of can relate to stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Even if you haven't lost a loved one, or even if you have, you can relate to that kind of emotion. But it's like I was telling you just yesterday, I was more emotional probably when Edge retired a few years ago, because I actually grew up with Edge. Edge was a wrestler that I loved his gimmick. I loved his character. I loved his tenacity and his emotions in the ring. And Daniel Bryan had that too, but I've always said that you got to have the whole package. And Daniel Bryan, to me, he was just missing something for me to really like him. And maybe it was the look, maybe it was the character and just the moniker of him. Mm-hmm. But now that he's retired, I think I kind of, I definitely can say I took him for granted.
Yeah, to each their own on guys that you're going to support, mm-hmm. and guys that you're kind of just going to kind of push aside and maybe and that you'd pay to see, but you're not necessarily going to go bonkers for them. Mm-hmm. Daniel Bryan was kind of in between. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like you respect him for what he can do, but you're also not going to go out and spend $30 for a Daniel Bryan t-shirt. So I get it. I completely understand. For me, the best thing for Daniel Bryan was stepping away. I know a lot of people are kind of saying, why are you stepping away? There's so much talent coming with NXT, the recent additions.
Just bad
timing. You can have so much quality matches, and it would set things up so well. AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, the list goes on and on.
Austin Aries again.
Who you can put him with. And everybody, well, then, to my counter to that is, what I would say is, watch some of his stuff earlier. He's faced some of these guys. Mm-hmm. Some of his best matches were not in WWE, like I've said earlier.
Yep. And it's been noted too. He would be a legend of wrestling. Not a WWE legend, but I would definitely put him at the highest ranks of top tier wrestlers in the world. And Kurt Angle even he tweeted out a post today on Twitter that he was referencing Daniel Bryan as one of the all-time greats, putting him up there with names as Shawn Michaels and Chris Benoit. Just the technical wrestlers of the world. Chris Jericho's up there as well. CM Punk. We're talking, the guys that they had the craft of the art of wrestling. They mm-hmm. knew it, and he was one that he loved it. He didn't do it for the millions of dollars. He did it for the pure excitement from the crowd, the mm-hmm. reaction, and just that feel of being able to work what you're the best at in the ring in front of just thousands of people. It didn't matter if it was 20,000 or if it was 20 people.
Yep, he did it all.
He gave it, and that's what I respect about him. That's the same thing goes for John Cena. I might not necessarily like their character, their gimmick, what have you, but I definitely respect Daniel Bryan 110% of what he did in the ring. Outside the ring, of course, he got emotional talking about Connor the Crusher, which he was a big influence on.
That is absolutely huge for me right there. It was what he did for that little boy and what happened and how WWE completely made that little boy's life
before he succumbed to cancer.
So beautiful before mm-hmm. that little boy, unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where you, and especially also announcing that the real reason why he ended up cutting his hair, he donated to children's cancer.
Class Act.
To make
Absolutely
wigs
a class
for
act.
cancer.
His retirement speech, should be passed down to future generations and future people.
Like Ultimate Warrior-esque. They could definitely do that.
Certain athletes when they retire, such as a certain Detroit Lions player needs to go out and give a speech, such as Kelvin Johnson. Not going to talk football, but there is so much Daniel Bryan gave to us wrestling fans that you can cherish and will live on. For me, my greatest memory for Daniel Bryan is probably a match that he had with CM Punk a couple years before Punk actually left.
Was that for a title, do you know?
That was just, I think, on a simple Raw or SmackDown, head-to-head, phenomenal match. I know they've had several, but in WWE, I know a lot of people are saying, okay, stick to strictly WWE's matches. So I'll do just that. WWE, CM Punk versus Daniel Bryan. Those matches, WWE Network that, search it, you will not be disappointed. And favorite memory would have to be definitely the Connor's Cure and what he did for that little boy. It was very heart touching, and you get emotional, and it hits you in the feels, like you said earlier.
I think for me, my two big, of course, I have my favorite match of Daniel Bryan's is probably his most recent one, and that was at WrestleMania 30 against Batista. I feel like you could kind of tie that into a match/moment because it was a great story. That told a great story of him being the underdog. That was where he was fighting with the Authority.
He also beat Triple H that night.
Yep, he wrestled 2 matches that night, overcame the odds against Triple H, and then, of course, going on to beat Batista and capture his first WWE World Heavyweight Championship. My favorite moment or moments were probably back during the Team Hell No days with Kane. And a lot of people are going to remember those. I mean, during end of 2012, 2013, when he wasn't really going for the title, he had just finished up a feud, I think, with CM Punk for the WWE Championship. He lost the World Heavyweight Championship in 2012, and then that's right around the time where he started that whole feud with Kane, the anger management segments, every Raw that they had with Dr. Shelby. I thought those were just...
It was absolutely spectacular and very
great
well
chemistry.
Done.
They were
very comical.
It was almost like they never missed a step. It was almost like they just put these two on screen without rehearsal and said, go out there and entertain, and they did that, and they had some great, great moments there. Something that's really, like I mentioned earlier, in 5 years, what this guy accomplished is just phenomenal because as far as championships are concerned, he is actually only one of 26 Triple Crown champions in WWE and only one of 15 Grand Slam champions. And that means he won the World Heavyweight Championship, Intercontinental Championship, Tag Team Championship, United States Championship, WWE World Heavyweight Championship, which was a 3-time reign, and he also was a Money in the Bank winner. So, all that in 5 years is just, you don't see that often. And
no, you don't. It's what he did in those, with his time in WWE, he really did take off. And I want to close the Daniel Bryan segment with this, is that where does he go from here? And there's a lot of questions, and I have one if he would be up to doing this. And this is one more big hurrah, one more spotlight, and I think I'd make note of this on Twitter or Facebook, and that would be to be the special referee for Triple H versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. Gives him one more shot at glory, doesn't have to get hurt, can be the referee, can screw over Triple H.
Doesn't have to take a bump either. He can take a shove.
And that gives everybody that swan song, everybody, that makes you happy. I think that is the ultimate way to send him off in the right direction. If that is what he is willing to do, that is.
You must have been reading some Scott Hall tweets, have you? Because that was Scott Hall's idea for WrestleMania main event, is to have obviously Triple H versus Roman Reigns, to have The Rock in Roman's corner, to have oh my goodness,
Shawn
Michaels to be Triple H's corner, and Daniel Bryan to be the special referee.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, if Stone Cold Steve Austin doesn't end up beating him to the punch, I think that would be great because yes, he doesn't have to go out with, even though his retirement farewell was great. If you were to close the chapter on Daniel Bryan's career just like that in the ring with the yes chants and the Daniel Bryan chants and him leaving Raw, walking out, that would be great. But even guys like, look at Ric Flair, can't stay out of the spotlight. He's on TV these days. He retired back in 2008. Edge retired in 2012. We've seen him. Him and Christian have the Peep Show on the the Edge and Christian show that totally reeks of awesomeness on the WWE Network. It's going to be debuting soon.
Ooh.
And he's also been on Raw as a guest host, and he actually was in that segment with Seth Rollins where he almost got curb stomped. And I think Daniel Bryan, if he can at least make an appearance at probably one more WrestleMania, and just to have that moment,
That's just my idea.
I think it'd be great.
That's just my idea, but I'm interested in hearing yours. So, if you want to get back at me, tweet at me at dbart88. Be my guest.
Yeah, this guy needs some arguments definitely to make it a little bit more interesting. It's not always fun when you have a one-side argument. You always like to have people chiming in. But to conclude, like you said, our Daniel Bryan segment here, I'm just going to play a short clip of, just the overall emotion and just a little clip from his speech here. And there's one word that Daniel Bryan used in his speech that he used quite several times, and that was grateful. Grateful for many things. And I want our listeners to hear what Daniel Bryan was the most grateful for.
But a week and a half ago, I took a test that said that maybe my brain isn't as okay as I thought it was. And I have a family to think about, and it is with a heavy heart and the utmost sadness that I officially announce my retirement. But if there's one thing, so I've gone through all these complex emotions in this last little bit. I've been angry, I've been sad, I've been frustrated, I've been all of that. But today, when I woke up this morning, I felt nothing but gratitude. I have gotten to do what I love for nearly 16 years. I am grateful. I am grateful because of wrestling. I got to meet the most wonderful woman in the world. Who's beautiful, she's smart, and she completes me in a way that I didn't even think was possible. And that's because of wrestling. I am grateful. Now, tomorrow morning, I start a new life. A life where I am no longer a wrestler. But that is tomorrow, and that is not tonight. And by damn, I have one more night to feel this energy and to feel this crowd. So if I could just get one last yes chant, I would really appreciate it.
And that's really that's what he's made up of. I mean,
so emotional.
Gratitude and being grateful, and of course meeting his wife Brie. And it's because of wrestling, and you don't see that many days. I mean, obviously, it's really ironic that the two biggest names in the last decade are with Bellas. Obviously you got Brie with Daniel Bryan, you got Nikki with John Cena, who they could be soon to be married. Who knows? But
if John decides,
John and Daniel could be brother-in-laws, I guess you could say.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, wouldn't that be interesting to be in-laws?
They'll both be done with wrestling in the next couple of years. John is on his way out too, I think.
But a lot of gratitude, though. class act from this guy. I mean, and everybody knows the story of Daniel Bryan and just how he has just always gone out there and done things for the crowd, the fan, not for himself. He does it for the love of wrestling, but just he does it for the fans. And, being grateful and showing gratitude and going out on your own terms, it never makes you less of a man. And I give him the utmost respect and props for everything that he did and accomplished.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel Bryan. It's been a marvelous career.
Absolutely. But other than Daniel Bryan's farewell to the WWE Universe, we also had another decent but lackluster Monday Night Raw. As far as I loved opening the show with, obviously we saw Stephanie come out, and it's crazy because, of course, the crowd starts drowning. The Daniel Bryan chants start erupting. We're in his home state of Washington, and she totally put it to him. And that's
She's got to.
You gotta
Ultimate heel.
You gotta love Stephanie the heel, and especially the authority figure and stuff. And she did her part, and obviously they did obviously having the contract signed for the Fastlane main event. Having Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose in the ring at the same time, and having that, I like. Do you kind of like what they're doing with Dean Ambrose as far as trying to step up to Brock Lesnar, but it just leads to him getting his ass kicked? You like how they're kind of writing this and building this as making kind of Ambrose look like a psycho, but then again he gets his ass kicked every time.
It's kind of getting a little stale.
Yeah, it is.
For me, I
think so.
Eventually, you got to have the David versus Goliath kind of thing type going on.
Yep.
You're going to have Ambrose get to Lesnar eventually. It's got to happen. Whether if it's going to be at the pay-per-view, not going to happen because we all know Ambrose is just there to get pinned.
Yep.
But
I think in a way that's kind of what WWE is trying to do is they're trying to make the fans aware, like, hey, we haven't forgot about Dean Ambrose in this whole situation. He is just kind of there, pushed to the side. Hopefully he has a bigger role in reality at Fastlane. I think he will. I think that this is going to be a very, very good high-profile match.
You hope so, but you don't think it's going to happen because y'all know what's going to happen in the outcome with Roman Reigns winning.
Unless WWE just pulls an ultimate shocking swerve, which I just don't see because Vince has not done that since the Attitude Era days, but it would be awesome to see. And obviously I think we both agreed that Dean Ambrose probably deserves to face Triple H for the title because he is the only one of the Shield brothers that has not won the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. So, and he's probably the most over, other than Seth Rollins, who's on the shelf. But I really strongly believe that Dean Ambrose is probably the most over face in the company right now that is unfortunately not going to be put in that high tier spotlight at WrestleMania.
It's unfortunate, but I think that you'll see Ambrose not headlining WrestleMania, but I think you're going to see him towards the end of WrestleMania having a very solid match with someone, but it will not be for the ultimate prize, the title.
If you were to book your ultimate match for Dean Ambrose, obviously for the championship, who would you have him face and where would it be?
Are you talking World Championship?
Yes, WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Who would his opponent be, and where would he win it at? What pay-per-view, I guess?
Dean Ambrose versus AJ Styles versus Chris Jericho versus Finn Balor.
Who's champion? This is Dean Ambrose winning the belt from somebody.
Yep, Finn Balor's champion.
So this is probably going to be next year.
Finn Balor.
In realist.
I'm being real here.
Yeah.
why couldn't this happen?
Oh, I know.
This is what people would want to see.
And it's a perfect mix of old school and new school as well.
And, that came straight off the top of my crazy little mind that I have going on here. But book that. You will print tickets. People will buy into that. That is something that wrestling fans can get behind. That's what people want to get behind is a good product, good wrestling.
Yep.
And I think that is what will get you printing tickets, people selling out arenas, is a match like that. You can have Ambrose walk out there with the championship. Or you can have him lose again and keep pushing him back, which WWE continues to do.
I slightly disagree as far as the match itself and who he's going to beat because I don't think that they're going to put the title on Finn Balor before they put it on Dean Ambrose. I can see realistically them having it come down just when Seth Rollins returns. Having Seth Rollins.
It's very true.
Probably having him, because he's going to probably end up beating Roman for the belt. The title's coming back on Seth Rollins one way or another, and he's going to probably take it from Roman Reigns when he wins at WrestleMania.
Why I have such high hopes for Finn Balor, and this is just me thinking outside the box, as I do quite often, is that there's a lot of posts with him and Triple H. A lot of posts with him in the title.
He kind of
he
mocking
mocks
him.
Triple
Yeah.
H quite a bit in some of his
Taking
things.
after him, yeah.
Why don't they turn that into a story? Triple H sees that, doesn't like it, calls out Finn Balor.
I think it's more so because Triple H is more behind the scenes in NXT. He doesn't really show up on NXT television or programming, so to speak. I think he's just more of that's kind of like he doesn't want to take away the spotlight from the NXT guys. He already has the spotlight currently in WWE programming. I think in NXT he doesn't really want to make it about himself or put himself.
Why not put over a guy like Samoa Joe?
Oh.
Why not put over a guy like Finn Balor? Why not put over AJ Styles?
I think they want to wait till he gets to WWE. I think that guys are already so over in NXT. Guys like Samoa Joe, guys like Finn Balor, Austin Aries. He's a newcomer there, but he's already over, just like AJ Styles is now in WWE. But these are guys that are already over, that are going to be in the WWE within the next few months. And I mean, we're hearing Samoa Joe might debut as early as the Raw after WrestleMania, which would be amazing. But I think that is kind of the reason why they're holding back of having Triple H appear on NXT. I just feel like he already knows what these guys are capable of. He already knows that the fans are totally over. They're so involved with their characters and the simple storylines that they have. Everything in NXT is organic. That's what's so awesome. It's drawing more and more fans, even though they have them in arenas that are probably only about 2,500 people. But it's such a spectacle, and what it's been able to, how well it's grown over the last year or 2 years. And I just think that when these guys come up here, fingers crossed that they do not ruin what the momentum that they have going right now in NXT as the top guys.
That's my biggest concern with Balor.
Yeah.
Is as hot as he is, and he's the champion. I know he's banged up right now, which you can touch on here in a second. But I don't want to see some of these guys get buried, and that's the same thing with Bayley and Balor and some of these big names that are in NXT that are kind of carrying the workload down there. I'm so just on the edge, and as much as I want them to come up here and get their opportunity to shine, I am so nervous that they're going to be buried. Insert Neville.
Yeah. Well, Neville didn't really have a character like Finn Balor's. Finn Balor is a character that we have not seen in WWE probably since The Undertaker. And I think that's why he is so unique. And I think that's a character that you really are going to be walking on eggshells with once he is promoted to the main roster. And I feel like he is going to have leeway. He's going to have creative control over his character. Even though he's a new guy, he's still the top name in NXT. So you're going to take him very seriously. You're not going to take his character lightly. And, of course, you're going to have to worry about backlash from major NXT and WWE fans that know about Finn Balor. And I really think that his character is going to mesh well on the main roster. Starting him off with a very hot feud is going to be key to getting him, like they're doing with AJ Styles. Even though he is a guy that's older, he's been through the reigns before, not WWE-esque, but he's been there before. Starting him off with a guy like Chris Jericho, who is the best in the world at putting guys over. Who do you start a feud with for Finn Balor?
That's why I said Triple H.
You think that
I
off the bat?
I think Triple H and him have a good relationship behind closed doors. I think that Balor probably idolizes Triple H like a lot of guys do. It's completely fine and nothing wrong with it. Why not have Triple H wrestle Finn Balor? I don't know how you can put this all together as a match with creative as messed up as they are right now. You can have Balor come on Raw, taunt Triple H. Be like the next Daniel Bryan. I hate to say it.
But it's his own character.
But he is his own character. And
I like that about him.
And he's a lot more intimidating than Daniel Bryan is. He doesn't have to wear the makeup. He can come out as the normal street Finn Balor.
Yep.
And eventually you build him up to that demon character to go against Triple H.
Yep.
So that way it doesn't look like Balor would be intimidated to go into a big match against Triple H, say at a big time pay-per-view. It sets it up perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that having him come in here and kind of talking about NXT on WWE programming, like I don't know how real life you could make this as far as, what you talked to Triple H about, as far as selling a program, with a storyline of, Triple H, you held me back in NXT from doing this or coming up to the main roster. It's all because of you that I didn't get here sooner. That's where creative has to come in, and creative has to do a really good job with how they turn that into a really well marketed storyline. And Other than Triple H, I really don't really have a name that I could throw out there. I mean, because you're not going to throw him into the World Heavyweight Championship picture right away.
Well, remember I teased it on the first week, so I'll go ahead and reveal it's been a couple weeks.
Yes.
Is you bring in the Demon versus the Dead Man. And,
What a great tagline for WrestleMania 33.
next year, WrestleMania,
Yes.
The Undertaker can drag his carcass
I
out
think
to
he
the
will.
ring.
I think he will.
And you have, the ultimate putover.
Mm-hmm.
And you have Finn Balor come out as the Demon.
Yep.
You have the Undertaker come out. It would be a spectacle. It would be just one of those matches that you say, wow, this is what I want to see. Because Balor can carry the Undertaker.
Yes, he could.
That is what you need to have. A guy that has in-ring talent to go against a guy who's maybe a little bit past his prime, kind of ready to hang it up, but just can't do it yet.
I think it would definitely go over as a better physical match than, say, what they're booking right now is Undertaker versus Braun Strowman for this year's WrestleMania.
See, no, that's garbage. That is absolutely a dumpster fire waiting to happen. How do you have Braun Strowman, who you haven't hardly seen, besides throw a few guys around, put people in some weird chokehold that he does when he grabs their head, and you got the Undertaker, who
Can barely move himself.
Can barely
He's
move in the ring.
51 years old, going to be at WrestleMania.
That's going to be a match where you go get your popcorn.
Yeah. For a big guy, we know that Bray Wyatt could hang with the best, and he
Mm-hmm.
hung with the Undertaker at WrestleMania, and he got put over. Even though he lost the match, he got put over big time, and it definitely did nothing but help his character. I think with Braun Strowman is that he's, like we mentioned before on past episodes, is that he is still learning his in-ring skills. I think two words, Vince McMahon, come to mind, because Vince McMahon is very high on Braun Strowman. He, I think, is kind of, he loves those big guys. But when you put two big guys in the ring, like a slow Undertaker and a slow Braun Strowman, to just whip guys around, I mean, this is not going to be a Suplex City match. We're not going to be seeing Braun Strowman suplex the hell out of the Undertaker at WrestleMania 20 times. It's just not going to happen.
It's just a
But,
fest all over again. Brock Lesnar is different.
I mean, there's...
CM Punk is different. Triple H is different. You don't put Braun Strowman against the Undertaker. I know you want to put Braun Strowman over,
Yeah.
but in order to put somebody over, the guy
Has
that
got-
you want to put over
Yeah.
has to have some credibility.
He's got to have credibility, and he's also got to have more in-ring experience. When you got to, I mean, basically, let's face it. Let's go back to WCW for a second. When they brought in Goldberg, we're talking about a guy that was a former football player, had no wrestling experience whatsoever.
And he was terrible in the ring.
He was terrible. He did the jackhammer and the spear. 2 moves is all he did, and what got him over and so amped up with the crowd is just his aggression and his ability to just dominate guys. That was big back in the late 90s because WCW had never seen, wrestling had never seen a guy like Goldberg before. Braun Strowman would kind of be in that same image back in the day, but we've seen guys like Braun Strowman. He is kind of like another Goldberg because he doesn't have an art in the ring of wrestling. He doesn't have the skills yet. But I think Vince McMahon is kind of, that's why I think he wants to throw him right to the dogs, to the Undertaker, and say, look, this is going to get you over. We can work on your in-ring ability later on. You can't do that. Not with a guy of Undertaker's credibility, his stature, the way he is now as far as his body is. I mean, he is in the best shape probably of his career. Unfortunately, at 51, I think that having those knee surgeries, having those back surgeries, it definitely added, I think, a few years to his career. Because if you look at Undertaker's...
And he's not exactly going out there every single night.
No, he wrestles a handful of times a year, if that. But if you look at old photos or video of the Undertaker, like I'm binge watching some Raws from 2000, the end of 2000, when Undertaker came back as the badass, and to see how much heavier he was and how he moved around, he limped a lot back then. Like he was in bad shape back in 2000, and he also was about 30 pounds heavier, and he's lost weight tremendously. I mean, he was, I think, 325. He's under 300 now, and he, with those surgeries, I think they did nothing but help him. So, yeah, he can take care of himself in the ring. But when you got a guy that's as reckless as Braun Strowman, I just don't think that it's going to be the right year. If this was maybe next year, like if you could have kind of fast forwarded or sped up Finn Balor's progress in NXT, to see him face Finn Balor this year and maybe Braun Strowman next year when he has a whole other year of development would be maybe a little bit more better.
I would go ahead with that plan that you just suggested because of, obviously, John Cena's injury. So that plan is scrapped.
Yeah, we were going to see Taker versus Cena.
Unfortunately, The Undertaker doesn't really have a really strong contender this WrestleMania.
No.
That's why you throw him in And I think The Undertaker would be more, I don't know The Undertaker personally, I'm just speaking out of context here, but in my personal opinion, I would think that The Undertaker would rather face Balor, because Balor is more athletic. He is more of a guy that you can work with. Two big guys in the ring. One's a very, very past his prime, and the other is just, I'm new. I'm with the Wyatts. I'm with Bray. Bray's the cornerstone.
I'm the big man. I just throw people around.
I'm intimidating, so
Yep.
I'm almost 7 foot tall. So let's put me against the Undertaker and let me lose. But then I'll just go off back with the Wyatts and disappear, and my career will be just that. I versed the Undertaker one time and lost. That was my career highlight at WrestleMania, and you'll never hear from me ever again. I'm Braun Strowman. That's his career in a nutshell.
Characters like Braun Strowman these days, I think, are really passé in the fact that they've been there, done that type of deal. I mean, there's been many Braun Strowmans. You can just call him a very
vicious.
He's a hairier version of like a Brock Lesnar. We already got a Brock Lesnar. We don't need another one. He's not as muscular. He's obviously long hair, beard. He's got that caveman look to him, very dominating look, very vicious look to him. I mean, he's very intimidating. Let's not
Yes,
kid
he is,
ourselves.
absolutely.
The guy's a beast, but to have him in a match again, I mean, him and Brock Lesnar, it wouldn't be a great wrestling match. Let's be honest, it would not be wrestling at all. It would just be very, very violent and very aggressive. I think Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman at WrestleMania would make more sense this year.
I agree.
Now, obviously, if you're going to go with, Undertaker versus Finn Balor, you really can't do it now because you should have brought up Finn Balor already.
And Balor's knocked up.
Finn Balor,
now.
yeah,
Not knocked out, but knocked out.
Knocked up, yeah. He is knocked out. He's obviously the injury with his ankle. He and I said this before that it was probably just going to be a little twisted ankle. He'd be out a few weeks, and that's what the rumor mill's saying is that he's probably only going to miss about 2 or 3 weeks of action. But what's cool about his situation, or the good news about his situation, is that NXT tapes their shows weeks in advance.
Yes, they do.
So he doesn't have to wrestle on TV for a good month, and he's probably not going to miss NXT TakeOver in Dallas the week of WrestleMania, so that's good for him. I think he'll be in good spirits there. But as far as this year facing Undertaker, very, very unlikely it's going to happen because of his injury and because he probably wasn't in the cards to get moved up to the main roster that soon. So, unfortunately, I think that us wrestling fans are going to have to swallow the pill and just realize the fact that it's going to probably be Braun Strowman versus the Undertaker at WrestleMania. And just
as painful as that is, I hope that they can do something with it. I'll just kind of take it with a grain of salt right now, and say I'll hope for the best.
Do you dare just do? I mean, if they don't end up rolling with Bray Wyatt versus Brock Lesnar, would you have a problem with Bray Wyatt versus Undertaker Part 2?
No, don't want to see it.
Don't want to see it again.
Don't want to see it again.
Because you know that Bray's going to lose again.
And you can't have Bray lose twice to the Undertaker.
No.
I know, he's the new face of fear. He proved that against Taker.
Yep.
That went over very well. I think Bray Wyatt's career took off after that. I know he hasn't, hit the cornerstone yet with the title.
Yep.
And that's one thing that's eluding him right now is that title picture. He's not in that picture, which I think he should be.
Right.
But no, Undertaker versus Bray Wyatt round 2 just doesn't seem like it fits at all for me. I can't put that in any kind of perspective that I'm gonna like it. I can't.
I think it sold on people last year with, of course, his character and what he was doing as far as being like the new school Undertaker, the Eater of Worlds versus, the Dead Man. But I think when you've already kind of gone through that stage and you've done the whole match with the Undertaker
but he wants to take down the Titans, so is that another
hint?
I want the Undertaker for round 2.
Mm-hmm. Rolling his eyes in the back of his head on this past
spoiler alert.
Yeah, for those that watch SmackDown, SmackDown was of course taped last night. Coming out and cutting a pretty dark promo. People say that it wasn't your typical Wyatt family, promo. It was a lot more darker, whereas he did roll his eyes in the back of his head like the Undertaker. So are we seeing these kind of hidden tricks or these hidden hints that Bray might be calling out the Undertaker here, or just maybe he's calling him out for Braun Strowman's sake?
I'll make it clear right now. I'll go back on what I just said. After thinking about this for a split second, I would rather see Bray versus Taker 2 than Braun Strowman versus Taker 1.
Yeah.
I think that it just makes sense. It puts Bray Wyatt in a better situation. I necessarily don't want to see Bray versus Brock. and I can't exactly pinpoint.
Anybody but you, Brock.
But I can't put that really down on paper right now. Why I don't want to see that? Because I don't. Both guys are heels. I like both guys to an extent.
I know that really the thing about those two is that they're not shoved down our throat heels. They're organic heels. Brock, I wouldn't really consider a heel. He's the heel in this match.
How do you have that go over though? How do you have someone winning that? Do you have because you don't want to have both of them look weak, especially Brock. You cannot have Brock look weak. But you don't want to have Bray get suplexed all over town either.
No, you got a guy like Brock who wrestles a handful of times a year. That the great part about his contract, the lucrative deal he has, and then you got a guy like Bray who every year you got to like really touch and go with him because you don't want to mess up his character development. And WWE has kind of done that over the years with every opponent he's had. John Cena has kind of buried Bray Wyatt. We've seen that before. Obviously losing at WrestleMania last year to The Undertaker. It helped him as far as, yeah, he got to wrestle one of the all-time greats. He's wrestled great future legends, future Hall of Famers, what have you. He's done that. He's been there, done that. But as far as getting those wins, I don't know how important those are. I think they're more important at WrestleMania than any other pay-per-view or Raw. But people are going to remember that.
A win at WrestleMania skyrockets your career.
People are going to remember that, especially if it's against Undertaker.
Or if you lose to The Undertaker.
You're another victim.
You're just another victim. But if you're able to put on a good quality match, people look at that and say, okay, well, he carried The Undertaker. Like in the match between CM Punk versus The Undertaker, Punk carried that match. We all knew that Punk couldn't beat Taker, but looking back on that, Punk carried Taker, made that match a pretty decent match. It wasn't great, but in years to come, Brock Lesnar beat The Undertaker, streak over. Now the streak has kind of lost its mojo a little bit for me. It's still something that you think about. And
it's
like,
meaningful. It's still meaningful. 22-1 is
Taker
still...
wrestling at WrestleMania now is not as big as it used to be.
No, it's not. It's not a spectacle because obviously there's that all-important first loss, and it's tarnished his record. Obviously, Brock Lesnar was the guy, and in my opinion, he was the right guy to break the streak. But yeah, I mean, it's not so much as a talked about event when The Undertaker faces now at WrestleMania. This is now his second WrestleMania since his streak has been broken. And I think the only thing that makes it worth talking about is that we still do not have a clear-cut opponent for him. I mean, you got to figure, we're a little over a month, maybe 5 weeks until WrestleMania. Usually around the 3-week mark to WrestleMania, we have an opponent lined up or the feud begins. And I think that we're going to find out probably either at Fastlane or, like we said, the Raw after Fastlane, which is in Detroit, if The Undertaker will indeed be facing Braun Strowman or Bray Wyatt. I mean, I really don't think that's going to happen. So, yeah, I think right now it's about a 90% chance it's going to be Braun versus Undertaker, which, I guess...
I'll just live with it.
I'll live with it. We'll live with
it.
it, and we just got to, I guess, take it with a grain of salt, as we said, and just kind of see how it all plays out at WrestleMania. Who knows? We could be surprised. So, they're going to work on that match countless times, and they're going to get it down right. So,
yep.
Going back to Raw, obviously, for what is this now? The 5th time we saw Kevin Owens versus Dolph Ziggler. And
goodness, let's move on from that.
For the second week in a row, we saw Dolph get the pinfall win over Kevin Owens. And it was a little bit more of a dirtier tactic. He, of course, used the ropes for leverage, moving out of the way of the cannonball splash. And, obviously...
Shawn Michael-esque.
Yeah, Shawn Michael-esque there. But yeah, 2 weeks in a row. I mean, are we starting to see kind of a trend? And of course, after the match, Kevin Owens with his classic, just tearing apart the announce table and just yelling
blaming Michael Cole.
I love his tantrums. I mean, it's great. It definitely adds to his heel character. And of course, nobody plays a better heel than Kevin Owens. We admitted that last week. But where do you see this going? Do you see this as like a long-term feud that could go to WrestleMania, or do you see it ending after Fastlane?
I pray that it ends at Fastlane because there's only so much Kevin Owens versus Dolph Ziggler.
And there's no championship on the line.
For no championship. The matches are not terrible, but I'm really getting sick of Dolph Ziggler versus Kevin Owens.
For the whole
Kevin
gimmick.
Owens needs to have a better opponent. I don't know who that is.
Or fight for a championship. After all, he is a prize fighter.
Why not have him just beat up on Kalisto? Maybe that's just me because I don't like Kalisto, and I think that whole Alberto Del Rio Kalisto rivalry needs to end ASAP because that's getting just an absolute snooze fest every single match. At Fastlane, we're going to do it again for the 6th time. Just like Owens versus Ziggler for the 10th time or whatever it
Or
is.
just have
Move on.
Just have Owens versus Ziggler open the show at Fastlane, and then of course have a U.S. title match with Kalisto and Del Rio, which is going to happen again, and just have Kevin Owens come out and interrupt it and just beat the hell out of him, and then you start a feud for WrestleMania for Kalisto versus Kevin Owens for the championship. Perfect.
It sounds good, but that's kind of a knock on Owens in a way. But I just am so sick of
But at least
seeing...
you put gold back around his waist.
I'm so sick of seeing the same stuff over and over again. But Owens versus Kalisto, it might not be that bad.
Wrestling, it'd be a hell of a wrestling
As
match.
far as a entertainment value goes, I think that's what you're going to get your best bang for your buck.
And when is Sin Cara? He just returned to the live event just this past weekend, so
Yeah, he's back.
You got to figure that maybe there
Drop
you go.
that title.
Drop the title to Kevin Owens and bring back the Lucha Dragons and put them in the tag team title picture where they belong.
And the Dudleys will go back in the tag team picture.
The heel,
The Usos.
yeah, the new heel Dudleys.
The Dudleys are now heels, and
We'll talk about
the
that.
glasses are gone, and yippee-ki-yay for the Dudleys that need to just simply take their walk of fame. They were in the spotlight again for a little
Yep.
while. It's time to just beat up the Usos countless weeks, but by all means, beat the Usos up, put them through a table every week. That's entertaining to me because I, for one, could care less about the Usos.
As far as the divas go, Charlotte versus
Ooh,
Alicia
goody.
Fox. Yeah, let's talk about the fact that out of nowhere, it seems that Charlotte's going to be defending her title against
RK
Brie
out of
Bella.
nowhere?
Yeah. Brie Bella. Who made her the number one contender? Is this just being done because of Daniel Bryan, or is this?
That is a good question
I
that I was going to
don't
bring
really
up to you.
know if Brie deserves a shot. I mean, where the hell is Sasha Banks? Where's Paige? Where's Becky Lynch? Where is this? Why not have a triple threat match? Unless they're saving that for WrestleMania, like we've talked about.
I think that is your ultimate thing right there. Is we're going to give Brie a match. We feel sorry because she's Daniel Bryan.
Does Brie win the championship from Charlotte?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
I
not.
don't think so.
That match is just, I think, like a filler.
Daniel Bryan comes out and punches Ric Flair in the face and goes out to yes chance, going back to the back curtain.
It sounds terrible, Derek.
No, it's
Why
not
would
gonna
you write
happen.
that up?
It's not going to happen. But I don't know where. I mean, automatically they just kind of said oh yeah, Charlotte's going to be defending her championship in the Divas Championship at Fastlane against Brie Bella. Okay, when did
This came
Brie-
out of nowhere.
Yeah,
what is this?
There was no Divas number one contender match. Do they even have those anymore? Not very often. But what made her the number one contender? I do not know who booked that. But hey,
Vince McMahon, probably.
I mean, obviously, we're probably going to have a Divas match to kick off Fastlane. It's probably going to all the Divas that deserve to be on the main card are probably going to be on the pre-show.
Yes, there is a match between Sasha Banks and Becky
that's
versus
right.
Team.
Oh, so Sasha Banks is now going.
Tamina and
she's a face
Naomi.
now. Oh boy,
Snuka and Naomi.
Snuka. God, that man beast. Ugh. Well, we'll see. Obviously, I think it's pretty obvious to tell who's going to win that match.
Obviously.
Team Bad's going to just go in the toilet. Bye. Don't want to see you. Don't care about
And
you.
then
Go back to NXT.
I would love to know where Paige is at. I know she's recovering
Concussions.
from a concussion, and that's a big issue too. Is now with Daniel Bryan out with his issues, Paige is now they're going to be even careful with Paige, and I want to see Paige back.
Yeah, I want to.
By all
we
means.
want to see that tattoo in high definition.
I
That
want
new
to see.
tattoo she's got.
I would love. I love watching Paige in high definition.
Oh yeah. Does she look any whiter?
Oh goodness.
Pale skin look? I don't really mind it.
Nope, not at all.
Oh man. Well, moving on to Bray Wyatt versus Ryberg. Ryback's sporting his new ring gear this week that looks a hell of a lot like a certain WCW superstar back in the day. I guess he's got rid of the one piece. He got rid of the whole look of kind of. I guess he kind of looked like RVD in a way. And now he has got no shirt on. He wears black trunks. With a big guy on the back on his ass with an R on the front of his crotch, and he's got the same gloves as Goldberg. He's got the elbow pads like Goldberg, the boots, everything. Coming from a guy that has just gotten pelted with Goldberg chants since he came back to WWE.
And now he's going to get it.
And now he's
night.
getting Ryberg chants. And obviously in this match, you knew who the winner was going to be. It was going to be Bray Wyatt. Why would you have Ryberg go over on Bray Wyatt? It wouldn't happen. So. It was a so-so match. It was a little bit back and forth, obviously.
Is this
but
WWE's way of saying we're going to
trolling the fans, maybe?
No, is this the way of trolling Goldberg? To bring Goldberg out of retirement and say, okay, Goldberg.
Ryback versus Goldberg
Why
at
don't you come back
WrestleMania?
and face Ryback?
Talk about one of the stiffest matches of all time.
Talk about one of the most I'm going to break your neck back matches
Yes.
of all time between
Yep.
those two. You all know CM Punk loves Ryback.
Oh my god, I'm dumb as fuck. I'm sorry.
That's Ryback is terrible with some of his. movesets.
Well, I think since that whole happened with CM Punk back in the day. I think he's still pretty aggressive in the ring, but I think he's brushed up a little bit on his in-ring skills, and I think he doesn't do as much crazy stunts as he did back in the day, like breaking CM Punk's ribs in half and taking quote-unquote 20 years off of his life. So, yeah, Ryback's going nowhere. They don't have a clear-cut opponent for him.
The only way that he goes anywhere, and the only way his career uprises, is if Goldberg decides that he's sick of watching the garbage that is in front of him, and if he even watches WWE, which is to be questioned. I'm sure he does on occasion, but I'm sure his phone's going off every Monday night saying, "Hey, flip on the TV, it's you." Yeah, I'm sure that he absolutely loves watching that, and it might bring him out of retirement. I don't know if he wants to wrestle, if he can wrestle, but if he can, and you're trying to pull him out by trolling him in that fashion, it might just work. Maybe that's Vince McMahon's motto. We don't have nothing for you, Ryback. You're going to go out there and you're going to look just like Goldberg, and we're going to hope that he comes out of retirement to beat you up.
You know Goldberg's taking notice of this, and he's seeing this. And I mean, he might see it as, instead of mocking, he might see it as kind of like a, I don't know, they're just...
Tribute?
Yeah, tribute to him. I don't know, like if you want to have a guy... I mean, obviously, Ryback is more of a roided-up version of Goldberg. Goldberg was never really a big, muscular guy.
Start the chants. Feed me Goldberg.
Yeah, he
Feed
was
me
solid.
Goldberg.
Yeah, feed me Goldberg. Yeah, such a freaking joke. Anyway, I'm skipping a whole bunch of matches because these are so.
There's no point in even covering them.
Let's just skip right to the main event of Raw. It was an 8-man tag team table match. It was the New Day with Mark Henry versus the Dudley Boys and the Usos, which ended very surprisingly. It was a very quick match, decent match for what it was. The Dudley Boys and the Usos picked up the win, but shocking turn of events after the match. While celebrating, the Dudley Boys turned on the Usos. Heel turn for the Dudley Boys that have been kind of floundering right now and just not having no feuds. They've been putting over the young talent. And this was great to see. I'm so happy that they kind of made the Dudley Boys how they were when they first came into WWE back in 2000, 99, 2000. And Bubba Ray with kind of like the Bully Ray gimmick a little bit, showing signs of that on SmackDown, which we'll see on Thursday night. Kind of paying tribute to the Bully Ray gimmick in TNA that made him very famous. What are your thoughts on this? I like the turn.
Well, for me personally, it's the WWE's tag team division is absolutely just...
It's suffering. It is really suffering.
They need some kind of push, and the Dudley Boys might be just that.
Yep.
Maybe the last-ditch effort to save the tag team division. The New Day is basically it. They're entertaining. They get people to like them. They get people to hate them, depending on the week, depending if they're getting trolled by The Rock or whatever it might be. But the New Day is the best thing going. The Usos are just there because they slap face paint on. They do a bunch of crazy things. They jump around like fools. The Dudleys are there because they're our childhood memories. And
signs of the Attitude Era.
For older people and that people that liked ECW, we want to see some hardcore. We want to see someone get put through the table. But now that they're heels...
They're not going to do that.
They're not going to do that anymore.
They're going to put guys through tables, but they're not going to do it on the fans' request.
But do you think that WWE's doing the right thing by this? Because do you think someone like me is going to go, "Oh no, don't put Jimmy Uso through the table"? I'm going to say, put him through the table 10 more times.
Real fans that are at the events, like if you're really going to boo the Dudley Boys, shame on you. You're a 10-year-old wrestling fanboy. Or even the guys that like, oh man, I actually like the Usos, man. They're Rikishi's sons or The Rock's cousins or whatever. Oh man, don't do that. I don't give a shit. The Usos are garbage. Put their asses through tables. I don't care. The Dudley Boys as heels is probably the best thing for them right now, especially if you start kind of pushing Bubba Ray back into the Bully Ray character that made him so famous in TNA. Come out wearing the leather vest and the chains around his neck and the black shorts.
What he did, his best stuff in recent years was
he was champion.
Was when he was in TNA.
Yeah.
One he was the leader of the Aces and Eights. When he was just very good as a singles competitor without Devon around.
He refreshed himself. He reinvented
himself.
Yep.
Is the word
He reinvented his career, reinvented his character, and obviously the name Bully Ray doesn't sound very intimidating, but what his actions, what he did in TNA as a heel, he can play the heel character great, and we've seen him play
One
heel.
more thing for them.
Yeah.
One more thing for them to put them completely over the top for me. Bring in Velvet.
Ooh, the real life girlfriend of
The
Bubba
real
Ray.
life girlfriend of Bully. Bring her in. I'm sure she'll take a few thousand.
She's not with TNA, is she?
I don't believe she is anymore.
I think
I-
they let her contract expire.
I think that you can bring her in for a few coins and a few hot and ready pizzas at this point in time, because I don't think she's really doing a whole lot besides working in the indies and maybe a few shows here and there. But why not bring in Velvet Sky and put her with the Dudleys and have her be that ultimate,
Kinda
just
like how
bad-
Stacy was
Just have
back
her
in the
be
day.
that bad girl mentality
Yep.
and have her come in and beat up some of these people.
You don't see that many days. Like nowadays, valets are very hard to come by. I guess you could say the only valet that we have out
Lana.
there is Lana with Rusev. But
Why not?
Having valets come out with tag teams? You haven't seen that in years.
It's just an idea. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can tell me how wrong I am and how stupid my idea was. That's completely fine. But I think it's a good idea.
I think so too.
I'm sure it would make Bully Ray happy that he's
Oh,
traveling
yeah.
with his girlfriend, and it brings you another diva to throw
Yep.
into that mix eventually. I
Oh,
know
and she belongs there
and
too.
she's not
She got
bad.
that look, yep.
She does.
Why? What she sees in Bubba Ray Dudley is beyond me. I mean, the guy.
Good for him. You know,
Yeah,
I'm all
it
for
makes
it.
me and guys like me and you, it makes us rejoice a little bit. But yeah, good for Bubba Ray. Real quick before we end the show, of course, something that came out of social media today that was big news as far as WWE goes was the suspension of Titus O'Neil. And when this first broke, I was like, "What happened? You know, what was the deal with this?" And you know, because towards the end of Raw, we all know that Raw went over just big time on Monday. I believe it didn't go off the air until about 11:25. It was about 20 minutes over. And I was kind of at the point where I was somewhat over the Daniel Bryan, you know, retirement thing. He was already kind of walking out of the arena, and apparently a video was released today of Titus O'Neil grabbing Vince McMahon's arm while he was trying to walk backstage, and Vince shoving Titus back just before the cameras cut away. And I don't know really there's still no answers to the question of why Titus grabbed McMahon, why he was trying to keep him on stage, but yeah, you know, a 90-day suspension. He's undoubtedly going to miss WrestleMania, that big payday.
Ugh.
I mean, this is really, and now, of course,
There's a lot of speculation. I'm really, really curious to why he grabbed him and why did Vince push him? There's something going on that is behind closed doors that we do not know about.
the only thing I can assume, I've watched the video, because it's literally like a 5-second video. I've watched it probably about 20 times, and I'm trying to see, like, he's literally walking up the stage, ready to go back. Stephanie's behind him. Triple H is behind her. And out of nowhere, you just see this black arm grab Vince's arm and just kind of like say, like, Vince, wait, don't go back, you know, don't go backstage yet. Because all the talent were still on stage clapping for Daniel Bryan. I think they were waiting for that cue to say, like, all right, we're off the air. But they hadn't been off the air yet. So I think maybe Titus was trying to signal to Vince, hey, stay on stage until the cameras are completely off, and then you can do whatever you want. And then when Vince shoved him, I think that was Vince's immediate reaction to, like, you know, why are you touching me, Titus? You know?
But what is the big deal that you need to push your talent? I don't want to defend Titus because I don't know the whole story. I think there's more than meets the eye. I think we're going to find out a lot of things in the coming weeks from some of these dirt sheets, you know, no DQ and whatever else that there's out there. But I want to know more. What's speculating? What's around the air? Why
Nothing's been obviously.
It's gonna come
know
out
more.
eventually.
Yeah, we'll know more in the next few days. But
There's
yeah,
got to be
it's
some
just.
hidden dirt on Titus that.
But
he's
to
not getting
suspend
good.
him 90 days for unprofessional conduct, they're calling it. Obviously, the media is now starting to turn it into a racial issue. They're saying, oh, they would have never done this with, say, a John Cena or a Hulk Hogan or anything like that. But I mean, I disagree with the suspension. I feel like
90 days.
Suspend him for maybe like a week. You know, take him off Raw for a week. You know, without pay.
He's barely on it as it is.
Yeah, or even, you know, if you guys suspend him for a month, do that, but don't have him miss WrestleMania for something like that. I guarantee you, if it wouldn't have happened on TV, if the cameras would have cut 5 seconds earlier, I don't think you would be hearing about this.
And I think it's because, you know, Titus isn't a top star either,
No.
but he is the top star in the Be a Star campaign right now with Cena being out. With Titus being the, you know, kind of WWE's one of the golden boys for the whole, you know, the charity, Make-A-Wish, and all the stuff that Titus does in the communities around the cities that WWE visits, it's a shame that now Titus is going to have that kind of black cloud over his head.
This isn't something like a Hulk Hogan type, racial.
But it is
scandal,
going to follow him because people are going to say when he shows up to these events, people are, close your mouth, and it's going to be, oh, what did Titus do? Why did he grab Vince? What's the heat behind this whole story?
I don't know. I definitely don't think that this is going to carry on. Like when he comes back, I think it'll be perfect timing if they do stay true to the 9-day suspension because Darren Young, who is out with injury, will probably be back within 90 days, and then they
I
can
hope
just
he
hook
comes
up.
back with an attitude and just beats on everybody.
I like the heel.
Come back as a
primetime
heel.
players. Yeah.
Come back as a heel. Start just kicking some butt.
There are just certain guys out there that they work they just work so much better as a face, or they work so much better as a heel. Titus and Darren, when they were the primetime players, the cockiness. You don't even have to be an angry heel, just the cockiness and arrogance that guys like Chris Jericho has, shown when he was the suit-wearing, cocky, arrogant son of a bitch like he was. I like that when Chris Jericho reinvented himself, coming out in the suits and doing the walk. And the primetime players, I think they could definitely mesh well as a great heel tag team.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, tag teams is lacking. That's something that's definitely lacking. If you want to put tag teams together to challenge the Dudleys, challenge the Usos, challenge the New Day, you need good, firm tag teams that
Exactly.
maybe can get over. I think that the primetime players would be that. And unfortunately, the tag team division is going nowhere in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
None of these guys are going to break out as single
No, you can't.
competitors.
You can't keep bringing back guys like the New Age Outlaws out of retirement. Well, Billy Gunn obviously is no longer with the company right now, but guys that have been in the Attitude Era before, bringing DX back. It's pretty sad when you got to keep bringing guys back out of the Attitude Era to just garnish ratings for 1 week. Like we talked about The Rock last week, when The Rock was on Raw, it skyrocketed ratings for 1 week, and then the following week, just right back in the craps again. And you can't have that. You got to be able to utilize the talent that you have to get them ratings based off of whatever storylines you're creating for them. And unfortunately, it's just not doing it. But the tag team division is something that has to be worked on. They've worked on the Divas division, the Divas Revolution.
It's definitely improving.
It's definitely
Everything is improving
but there's
slowly, but the tag team division.
The Ascension, we're supposed to be kind of like that next stepping stone.
The next Legion of Doom.
The next, the LOD 2.0, whatever you want to call them. And they went nowhere. They were garbage. The fans, they didn't take off to them. They just didn't take to them. Even in NXT, they were kind of, the Ascension, whatever. They were copycats, whatever. But the tag team division definitely needs to be worked on. And I don't know, as far as creating new characters, repackaging some certain wrestlers that might be.
Repackaging is what they're trying to do with Ryback right now.
Obviously.
Watch it flump.
There's certain guys out there, like I said, that they're either heels or they're faces. You can't be one or the other. You just got to look at them and say, that guy could never make it as a face. That guy he's a face or he's a heel. Daniel Bryan, face all the way. Heel Daniel Bryan, it just didn't work. The Big Show, you use a guy that size, he's not going to be a freaking face. Big Show, a heel. Ryback, with that size, that statue, that figure, heel. Primetime players, the big guys should all be heels. Batista, another perfect example. The fans turned on him at WrestleMania 30 because of the fact that he was
Sold
comeback.
Daniel Bryan spotlight.
Not only that, but they were trying to shove him down our throats as a monster face. When in reality, everybody knows that Batista's much more better as a heel. That's just what happens. So, I don't know, man. The tag team division definitely needs help, and I guess time will tell. We'll see what they do with it, but
All you can do is just hope for the best, and you hope that when
keep sticking with
Titus
it.
O'Neil and Darren Young come back, that they're not split up completely. I have a feeling that Titus will probably end up being a house show guy or a guy that's in dark matches,
Right.
free card matches, and Darren will be the guy that's facing Kalisto and facing Del Rio and getting beat up every Raw.
Absolutely. Well, we've just about hit our point at the end of our show here. Danny, was there anything else that you wanted to cover that we didn't already cover?
No, for me personally, I'm excited in the outlook for Daniel Bryan's career. I hope that he goes off and has a great life, and wish him all the
Starts a
best
family.
and starts a family. I know they both want to settle down and have kids, and more power to him. I hope, and I'm very thankful for what Daniel Bryan did. I've seen him countless shows, whether it was in ROH when I was a lot younger that I don't really remember as much as I would like to, or some of his shows with WWE that I've seen him in a cage match at the Joe.
Yep.
Seen him several matches where he stole the show and he was a phenomenal talent, and he will be greatly missed for me for his in-ring prowess because he was just simply that. He was an excellent.
Absolutely. Everything that he demonstrated in the ring, I think he could take all that charisma and utilize it outside the ring as maybe an NXT trainer or be a on-air personality. If he decides to go elsewhere, more power to him. But, while he starts this next chapter of his life as a non-active wrestler, I just wish him the best and have great respect for him. And as we say farewell to the Yes Man, I'm going to give you the cheers right here to our another show. And to the listeners out there, some breaking news and some unfortunate news. This will actually be our last Off the Rope show, as Danny and I will be starting back up our major announcement, our D&D Wednesday night sports show, as we did many years ago. So this will be our final wrestling show. Off the Ropes Live will cease to exist after tonight.
But we're going to throw in some wrestling.
But
in
we
there.
will, yes, we will still have some wrestling on our new show or our old show, whatever you want to say. But we will be continuing our D&D Wednesday night sports chat. It will be same time every Wednesday at 8 p.m. right here live on TalkShoe.com. We will have a different show ID, and that'll be we'll post it on Facebook, and we'll make our listeners aware of that. And we will also continue to do a video show as well, so that'll be up on YouTube. So farewell to the YouTube audience for Off the Ropes Live, but until next time, I am Derek, alongside my co-host Danny. This has been the final episode of Off the Ropes Live, so tune in next week for our re-debut, I guess our second coming.
Ooh, Red Wings coming into your home.
Yep, Red Wings,
Tigers starting in 10 days.
Yep, Lions
stoked.
we'll be talking about, and we'll add some wrestling and maybe even a little bit of basketball to the show too.
Chauncey
for-
Billups retirement night.
Yep, this will be his big retirement night for Chauncey Billups. So attaboy to him. And next week we will be all about all sports, not just wrestling. So tune in next week to D&D Wednesday Night Sports Chat. So again, on behalf of myself, Derek, and my co-host Danny, we will see you guys next week.
Adios.
Call recording has been completed.
Yeah.
Got it right this week, eh?
Yes, we did.